To record. Good afternoon. This is Knut Rostad, president of the Institute for the Fiduciary Standard, and today is September 23rd, and our panel discussion today is on flat fee, fixed fee, hourly fee advice only as a fee only compensation model. And we've got three excellent speakers who practice and advocate for this compensation model. And starting with Sarah Grillo, who is known far and wide for her transparency initiative and her monthly meetings. And then Scott Solasky, who has been, I think, in it from the beginning. And I don't know if you're known as far and wide as Sarah, Scott, but anyway, it's great to have you here. And then likewise with Holly Donaldson, who is also a practitioner using these fee models. So I will turn the microphone over to Sarah so she can begin. And I think each of you should begin with a maybe a somewhat longer than an elevator speech introduction of yourselves. So we have that on the record. So Sarah, mic is yours.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Grillo. Thanks for being here. So the first thing is I just want you to go to this website, transparentfinancialadvisor.com, because that basically summarizes our movement that all of us here, Scott, Holly, Knut, some of you that are listening probably already are on this movement, okay? Join the transparency movement. I don't care if you're an insurance agent. We will take you at our virtual meetups. The meetups are free. We want everybody in the world to come to these meetups. And here's why, because what we're doing is we're looking to further financial advice that is fairer, logical, and more transparent through the manifestation of business models such as flat fee advice only and hourly in society to a larger extent than they are. Period. That's all I will say about the transparency movement. Come to the virtual meetups. They're free. If you want to know more, if you want some of the replays, I could send them to you. All these resources are free as the air that we breathe, because like I said, we just want everybody to be converted to transparency. Now, here are the three biggest misconceptions that I feel that people have, whether they're looking to strike out, leave that wirehouse, leave that RIA firm charging AUM and start their flat fee practice or hourly or advice only, or if they maybe just don't know anything about this. And these are the misconceptions that I've seen. Okay, that I just want to clarify right away. It's the last thing I do, and I'll make it brief, and then I'll turn it over to the other two speakers, which are far more capable than I. So the first thing is that people say, oh, I can't be a flat fee advisor because I have a mortgage and a wife, and then we want to go to Disney World every year. Okay, this is not charity work. Okay, let me just be clear with you that what we are advocating for is to be compensated more fairly for the resources of time and skill and hours that we are putting into the work. We're not looking to do business as the lowest cost provider. Now, in many cases, and Scott can probably speak to this, the flat fee does undercut when you're talking about big portfolios where people, I know one person paying $4,000 a year, a month to UBS. He didn't even know what it was for. We got him hooked up with a flat fee advisor. It saved the guy probably $40,000 a year. Okay. That's happens in some cases, but we're not looking to do business with small clients. We're not looking to do business with millennials. We're not necessarily. Okay. Some are, but that's not the objective of this movement. It's to be clearer, more logical, and fairer in the way that we treat clients, to have it be more even keeled so that the balance does not swing in favor of the advisor because of the opacity and the concealment and the manipulation and all of that. All right. So clear, logical, and fair does not equal broke. Let me just say that first of all. Second of all, going with number one, the people I know that have started out and are capable financial advisors, I've been running this transparency movement 3 years. These firms are maniacally growing. I mean, I'm seeing people that just kind of started out when I was starting out my meetups, and they were like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Oh, and then they're like, closed. they're closed to new business. I'm like, can we meet? They're like, oh, you could schedule with my secretary. Like, I'm like, well, who are you? Like, how'd you get so successful? To be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised in some cases. All right. And it's because these business models are rare. How many people are out there saying, I'll charge you $350 and I'll create a financial plan for you? The lawyers love it. The highfalutin business people, the business owners love these models because business owners are shrewd. They themselves understand what it is to provide a value, and they don't see value in some of these schmucks that are charging these huge commissions. They don't even know what they're for. Okay, so there's a potential for rapid growth if you're capable, mind you, capable advisors. To be perfectly fair, I have seen people come into this and flunk out, but between you and me, I wasn't so sure that I would hire them for my mother if my mother needed a financial advisor anyways. Amen. So you see what I'm saying? And maybe that is kind of where they belong, is not being a financial advisor on their own or not being an entrepreneur, okay? And the third thing is, this is not just like the flat fee. I don't call it the flat fee movement. We call it the transparency movement. And Scotty was like so instrumental in when we were coming up with it. I can't even take credit for naming this because Scott helped me name it, right? 3 years ago. But it's not just about the fee. If you really look at some of these people, and that's why you'll have to come to the immersion event in March. I'm putting it into the chat as I speak. Can do two things at once. Yeah, I have 4 kids under 11 years old. Okay, so it's like I gotta be fast like the lightning, folks. Okay, anyways, when you speak with some of these people, okay, they're not the average person in terms of how they communicate. If you go watch my webinar replays, Andy Panko, I think the Andy Panko one is on that website I put in the chat. If you look at someone how like Andy Panko talks, how a Scott talks, how Holly talks, these people are articulate and they're clear in how they think, and they're logical in how they present their firms, and the services have to align with the fee. That's why, because it's not just, oh, we're doing the industry standard. Oh, we'll charge you 1% of your assets, which unclear what the dollar amount is, unclear what the assets are. It's an ambiguity. They don't speak in vagaries. These are people who do not like vagary and opacity. And when you surround yourself with people like that, which is another reason you should join our community, by the way, but when you see someone whose mind works like that, they're not just doing the flat fee for the sake of the fee. It's the whole practice is like that. It's the whole practice that everything is clear, articulated. What are the services? When will they be delivered? With what frequency will they follow up? These people blow me away in how they're running the firm. All right? So don't let all the myths confound you. I just told you the clarity. Now I'm going to be quiet. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sarah. And that you covered a lot of distance in a short period of time. Okay, Scott, you're on.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me, Knut, today. Appreciate it. I echo everything that Sarah just mentioned here, and then I'll kind of add in some additional things from here. So based on my experience, and we were kind of talking offline a little bit here, that a lot of advisors that are looking to potentially explore the ideas of transparency. It's not just fees, but it's also their whole business model and their services that they offer. There's kind of 2 camps. You've got the experienced advisors that are generally a little bit older that are looking to transition from more of a traditional AUM model and looking at different options to do that. Then you have younger advisors that are just getting into the business and they haven't been under sort of legacy models, I'll call them, and they kind of want to start with their foot in the right direction and look at transparency type of models from the get-go. So I think it's good that the organization transparency movement that Sarah's talking about, there's a combination of all of those folks from both sides of the spectrum in there, and they help one another move this movement forward. In the past, I've got about 25 plus years of experience as a financial advisor. And early on, a lot of what I was doing with our company at the time was promoting, and this you got to keep in mind was like 25 years ago, a lot of investment management with some planning, I'll call loosely, on the side. But charging clients a very, I'll call low fee, reasonable fee at the time. There wasn't robo advisors that we have today, and Vanguard offering lower cost products on their personal financial advisor side of their business. So it was pretty much the 1% AUM model. There wasn't really any hourly. I mean, there was the Garrett Planning Network. That was pretty much it. There was no XP, network. It was just sort of Cheryl Garrett and the hourly model, and then everything else was the legacy AUM model. So I sort of transitioned over time to thinking that it's not just about lower fees or fair fees, even though that's a big component of it. That's when Sarah and I started talking many years ago about sort of the transparency side of this. So you could be charging any fee across the board and any fee model across the board. And I have my beliefs and feelings on kind of the correct way that should be done. And we might get into that. But I think that from my experience, the transparency side of it is almost more important than the fee side of it. The fees have to be transparent, but I'm talking about how you charge those fees, because if you're transparent with the services you offer and what you're delivering to a client, both in deliverables and advice, then the fee will just sort of fit into that level of transparency. So what I see even on sort of, and this may sort of poo-poo what we're talking about here, but even on the transparency side of what we're trying to create here, I'll look at some of the advisor websites that are part of our movement, and they're not as transparent. It's not just fees, it's even services. They'll use generic terminology. We do, comprehensive financial planning. We do holistic planning, and, the list goes on of all these descriptive type of terms. Well, these are all sort of just made up terms by our industry. I mean, at the end of the day, as advisors, we're trying to help clients, provide advice to them, potentially manage their investments depending on an advisor's business model. But at the end of the day, it's delivering really answers to their questions that they have and reassuring them that they're going to be able to do what they want to do with the resources they have currently today and into the future. And then the question is, how do you spell that out so people know what you're doing so it's not a mystery? I mean, some advisors do a really great job at this, and they get into the weeds as advisors and list out, we're going to talk to you, so many times a month or so many times a quarter, and this is what we're going to cover every quarter. And, that's all great, but sometimes that's even overkill, because then clients may feel that they can't call you or contact you in between this calendar that you've set out for services that you're going to deliver. And then also, I've seen times where advisors sort of become overwhelmed based on the calendar that they've created, because, for instance, tax reviews for clients usually happen towards the end of the year into the beginning of the next year. And depending on, the number of clients that an advisor is trying to service, you might get into a point where you can't do anything for your other clients other than service the tax side of this. So, just, I guess, bunching up certain topics at certain times of the year is great, and it's great for presentation purposes. But the reality is that, I have felt in my own business and practice over the years that I just encourage clients to contact me whenever they want. Yes, there's certain times of the year that we do certain things, but anytime that they have a money question that's of any significance at all, they should be emailing or calling me, and it's not a waste of my time. I don't happen to bill clients by the hour. I bill them on a fixed flat fee per month, regardless of how many times they call or email. So that, that maybe not be the model for everybody, but I think I do a pretty good job of my years as an advisor of screening like-minded people, where I know, that I'm not going to be abused by a client that is calling me, 50 times a year for things that could be answered by an email or answered at the next meeting or that. So at the end of the day, to me, it's fees and it's transparency. And a lot of, in our industry, the fees are very opaque and they're not transparent. And then when that's the case, also, I tend to see that the services are not as transparent either, or even close to transparent on their websites. And even in our movement, a lot of advisors are reluctant to post their fees on their website. They'll post their services, they'll post their service calendars and the services they're going to offer, but still they're reluctant to post their fees. Well, unfortunately, folks, that's just as important as posting the services you're going to offer a client. And, if you're leaving it up to a client to figure out what the services are and interpret what you have there, then they certainly should be able to interpret your fee. And a lot of what we get sometimes is, well, yeah, but my fee is, complicated, depends on complexity and this and that. And, we don't want to leave it to a client to sort of figure that out. And we got to help them digest the fee and understand it. Well, if they can't digest and understand a fee, then they're not going to certainly digest and understand the services that you're providing to them. So I'll kind of shut up. I could get onto this whole soapbox for, hours on end, but transparency first, fees, services, and then also the second part of that is, and in my personal feeling, is advisors should be charging clients a fair fee. We should be making a good living, but charging people a fair fee. And unfortunately, under the AUM model, that typical 1% fee really almost never aligns with the services providing. You're either making too little or making too less, and it's just not a good metric for pricing the advice business.
Thank you. Scott, are you sure you have nothing more to say?
Okay, I'll go
No,
on. Thanks. You twisted my arm.
No, we will come back to you in Q&A. You raised a lot of good points. Okay, Holly, please start with a short description of who you are.
Yeah, well, I'm Holly Donaldson. I'm down in Central Florida, and I've been doing this on my own since 2006. And before that, I had about a 18-year career in commercial and private banking. And I do advice only, hourly. I started out as fixed fee, transitioned to hourly a few years ago. I'll talk a little bit about that. But actually, I don't want anybody on this call to change. Don't do anything differently, because what Sarah said is true. This business model speaks for itself, branding wise and differentiation wise. And there are so few of us, and the demand is so huge. And if you all start transitioning to advice only and hourly, then we're going to have the opposite problem. So please don't make any changes to the way you do things. But I got into this, I'd like to say, for pure reasons of it's the right thing to do and all that. And it is for me. The important thing is it was for me. It was more of a selfish reason. I tried the ongoing fixed fee model and found that, in contrast to concerns about abusive clients, that was never my experience. It was more self-abuse. I've never done enough to earn the fee that I'm doing. That's my issue. And I knew that I was doing enough. I knew that people were happy with the service they were getting. However, I had this inner critic thing going on that it just never was enough. And after about 10 years of that, I decided I'm just going to quit fighting it. And I'm just going to charge hourly, because then I know that the work I'm doing, I am getting paid for, and I'm happy to do it, and I've done enough. And that's how I came up with doing it. So it really was more of a selfish or self-analyzing kind of reason that I came up with doing it this way. And so I would agree with Sarah. There's no problem with just like she described, small clients. And I wouldn't say my clients are small. About twice a year, just last week, I get somebody that's got, low to moderate 8 figures, and they just want somebody to be their guide, to be their navigator, to help them analyze. The run-of-the-mill clients for me are, 1 to 5 million in assets, where it's that unknown zone you all are familiar with of I just don't know that I have enough, and I just want someone to tell me whether I do or not, am I on track? And I'm happy to do that and then let them go and let them come back when they're ready. So it's hourly, as needed, step at a time. And again, I crafted it that way because it works for me and my personality. And it appears that there are enough people out there that are looking for something like that too. So I'm not as, I don't have as much to say about it as Scott and Sarah. And besides, I'm talking about myself mostly. So I'll just stop there, Knut.
Okay, fine. Well, thank you very much, Holly. On this hourly, I guess I'd like you to sort of address, and you know what they are, the 1 or 2 sort of negative comments about hourly as a general approach. And, just for whatever it's worth, I've never been particularly involved in hourly other than through Cheryl Garrett over the years and her folks there. And then, it was just literally 2 years ago, I picked up the book, A Matter of Time.
Yeah.
And I think he does a great job sort of telling the story of what running that sort of business is like. So so if you could just address one or two of the criticisms of this approach. And just, I think that might be helpful. And you don't have to belabor it because you obviously believe in it, but there are questions out there about all of these approaches. So if you could just do that, I think that would be helpful.
Sure. All right. And do you have any specific ones in mind, or?
Well, if I were to guess what a common question is, it's got to be more expensive because every time a client calls, you're writing down, a quarter hour here, a quarter hour there, or some such thing like that.
Okay, so it's not very scalable. It's maybe
Yeah.
another way to put it. And yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd agree that it's not scalable. I don't agree that it's a whole lot more time to write down your time. And the reason I know that is because before I decided to go 100% hourly, I was keeping track of my hours, like Mark Berg says to do in the book, before I switched. And I thought that I would dread keeping track of my time, and I thought I probably would quit doing it after 2 months. It's a piece of cake. Here's an app I use, Clockify. There are many apps out there,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it's just so simple and so easy. And I get off the meeting, I write down my time. I finish an email, I get my time. I don't even think about it, but that's me. Not everybody may.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. I want to see whether anybody else has any questions before I proceed with my questions for Scott and Sarah as well. Michael, do you have any questions for our speakers?
I do not. Sorry for joining this a little bit late. Actually, I do have a little bit of a question. So my background was in institutional investment management, and a big aspect of a firm competing with other firms is trying to offer like fee waivers and discounts to institutional clients. And I was wondering if anyone could speak on how that sort of like competition navigates itself when you're trying to have a business with individuals. Are you preemptively offering fee discounts, fee waivers, anything like that?
Holly, Scott, Sarah?
I just
Yeah.
talked.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll take that. I mean, Michael, no, on my side, I don't do that. And the reason for that is because I charge clients a relatively low fee to begin with. And, considering my experience and the fee that I'm charging, if a client cannot see value in that, then to me, they're really just looking for the lowest possible fee. And my fee is pretty low. So the answer is no on my side. I guess if I was a, higher priced advisor, I would probably answer it in a way just based on my experiences. At the end of the day, there's a lot of options out there, and it's really finding the right advisor for you, and then the services that they're offering, and if you're willing to pay the fee they're charging. Again, as long as they're transparent about the fee and transparent about the services, and you're walking in with eyes wide open, then I don't have an issue with it. Usually, it's people are walking in with sort of one eye closed and one eye open, and the advisor's not helping them open both eyes. So.
Thank you.
Scott, just as a follow-up, just to put what you just said into context, are you willing to say, I mean, you said you charge a monthly flat fee. I don't know whether it's the same for almost everybody that walks through the door or whether it goes up and down based on your a judgment about the complexity of the engagement. But I mean, are you able to say what a typical one might be and to sort of to provide context for your other part of your answer?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it just depends. I mean, in the flat fee and sort of hourly fee, advisors are charging all kinds of fees across the board. It's not like sort of a standard 1% when you're talking about the AUM model. But just from my own fee perspective, I charge clients a fixed flat fee of $495 a month, so just under $6,000 a year. So Is there cheaper options? Yeah, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a couple of hours of advisor's time, once a year to do whatever, give you some advice on something, how to rebalance your account, or you have a specific financial situation you want to cover, then certainly that's going to be the cheaper option to go. But I'm offering clients an ongoing relationship where I am not just working with them on all topics, financial advice, and then if I don't know the answers, then they need a professional that is outside of the realm, like CPAs, estate planning attorneys, or so on. I'm coordinating with those folks as well, and then also typically managing a client's investment portfolio. So I don't take on any clients unless it's really the full service package for that fixed flat fee. And as I mentioned earlier, I think I do a pretty good job of screening people for if it's a good fit. I have not been great early on 25 years ago doing that. And, unfortunately, it wasn't a great match of services and expectations. But, more recently in the last, 15 years or so, maybe even longer, I know what clients are looking for, whether it's going to be a good fit and it fits within this model. But I think, if advisors are trying to bring every single client on that contacts them is willing to pay their fee without any other criteria as to what they're looking for, service expectations, and everything else that goes into a relationship, then it gets a little bit complicated. And I don't think this model works, my specific model, for people. Because if I was working with clients all across the board, which I'm not, and I should probably preference that most of the clients that I work with, and that's the clients I tend to work with, and there's exceptions to that, for referrals from current clients or family members of current clients, not new people coming on, that I only really work with retirees or pre-retirees that are about 5 years from retirement. If I was trying to work with somebody in their 20s and 30s and they have a whole different set of issues and challenges that they're looking to go forward with than people that are retired or getting ready to retire, and you couldn't price a model on a fixed flat fee like I do for across the board for everybody. So every one of my clients pays the same fixed fee across the board. They get the same amount of time, whatever it is that they want. And I've never had to talk to anybody about abusive, time that they're using more resources than the next client, because the way I look at it is I personally don't care. I mean, advisors might, but I don't. So here's an example. I talked to a potential client, 2 meetings, an hour and a half at each meeting, and did work ahead of time for about another hour, hour and a half. So I've sunk about 5 hours into that. I got paid nothing. And then that's my business model, to make sure I'm getting the right potential fit client if they decide to come on board, make sure they understand what they're getting, what I do, what they're going to get out of it. And then it never becomes an issue of somebody calling me 5 times a month and then the next client calling me 5 times a year. I want them to do that at the end of the day. If they have issues to talk about, that's great. But I've priced that into the model already across the board. And if I find that, I've got the wrong client, then, we'll talk about that and make adjustments. But I don't adjust my business model based on, what clients are looking for. I have a very niche type, business and pricing model, and other advisors work with everybody across the board, and that's great. But if I did that, I would have to have probably 2, 3, 4 different fixed monthly fees that, encompassing the work that's going to go into each of those relationships. And frankly, I don't really think that, that's realistic for an advisor, a sole practitioner advisor, to be able to work across the board like that, unless they are working more probably on an hourly basis for clients as topics and things come up, because there's just so many ongoing expectations. And, if you have an ongoing relationship with a client, then, at the end of the day, I always come back is the hourly model is usually the most conflict free. There's never a conflict free model. But there's a lot of challenges that go along with that. And usually it's the advisor being proactive, trying to contact, a client about different things. But then, clients know they're getting, charged by the hour for that. Then you don't want to reach out to clients as much. Then the clients don't want to reach out to you. I mean, I'll let Holly speak to that because I don't charge hourly fees. But, I've just found issues over the years where, yes, it's the most transparent for the most part and the most conflict free, but it also has its own set of challenges. And knowing how the Garrett network worked from early on, we were big proponents of that. We weren't in the network, but at the time, a prior company that I was a partner with, we kind of did a lot of the investment management for some of their members. when we were doing mostly investment management 20 years ago. So I kind of know the ins and outs of that and what the concerns were then. It's a little different now because the market has shifted and people are searching for this hourly, advice model, where before it was the advisors really introducing that and worrying about how am I going to get paid and how am I going to be able to eat and all the things that Sarah talked about early on that don't really exist today.
Yep, yep. Good points. Good points. Andrew, do you have any questions for any of our speakers? I guess not. I guess not. Sarah, the issue came up regarding, and I can't remember whether it was from Holly or Scott, about the sense that there is a lot of demand for flat fee services generally. And I was thinking about that when I was thinking about the premise of Michael's question in terms of, the competition in his former environment between other institutional advisors. But is there anything you can add in terms of what we know about the supply and demand for flat fee, fixed fee, hourly services? Sarah?
I think it tends to be relatively concentrated. It's not your average person that's looking for this. It's somebody that has been somehow awakened to this because of the nature of either their work or how they proceed. So with it hourly or advice only, it tends to be a lot of DIY people that are able to, they're heavily internet followers, and they can follow these, like there's copy trading, there's all these kinds of like things that they could do, and they know how to trade already. And so for the advisor to charge 1% to put their money into a passive portfolio of index funds that they trade once a year and stay the course when the market goes down, these people are too smart for that. So it tends to be actually a lot of analytical types, very analytical business owners, DIY investors, amongst the highly educated populations, or at least those that are highly aware. These models tend to be very popular. If you talk to, like, for example, my parents that don't know the first thing, the only thing they know about finance is through me, they would probably, do business with, they do business with like a Chase broker.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If they're not tuned into it. So it does tend to be like more educated, analytical, and tapped into the internet.
Yeah.
That these people that are the interested kinds.
Got you. Scott, you, in your opening remarks, you basically made the case that this is really more about transparency in and of itself. That's my word, not yours, rather than whether it's a fixed fee or whether it's an hourly fee. You seem to focus on the transparency, and having never been an advisor, which I state on a regular basis, but as an observer, just by looking at the websites of many of the folks that are attracted to Sarah's monthly meetings, you can find out more on their website in many cases, not all, as you point out, than you can ever find out on any other websites. But I like especially that you say that we need to be as transparent about the services. You're out there on LinkedIn asking the question, what's the difference between a financial planner and a financial advisor, among many other things. So I guess my question is, what more can you add about the importance of someone looking at the website and getting a sense for not only what the monthly fee is or the hourly fee is, but also this is what they're going to get for what they pay. And I think about which is the services, and I think about this in part also because I remember, Sarah, when I visited a couple of the state regulators because they had problems with the issue of how to regulate an advisor who was not in charge. It was not running the portfolio or uh, managing the funds, and that seemed to me to be the problem. And uh, I think along with that, well, one thing I took away from that is that for the most part, they didn't have a clue what this thing called financial planning is, because that's not why they were there. That's not why they were paid to be there. They were there to watch over the investment part of it, to keep the bad folks from doing bad things. But anyway, so those are a couple of things I think about when I hear you talk about transparency. And so looking forward, how optimistic are you that we're going to see greater transparency and uh, uh, and greater specificity on the service side of it, or is that going to be an ongoing, eternal sort of uh, problem issue? Okay, I've said enough. So, Scott, thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to be an ongoing problem, and it's going to go on forever. I mean, the end of the day, the movement that Sarah has, the transparency movement, and what we're trying to do here, bringing transparency to services and fees, we're a speck of sand on a huge beach. So at the end of the day, yes, it doesn't mean that our efforts are not useless or futile in some way. But at the end of the day, as more and more people become part of this movement, we're helping the people that are looking for and want to take some active role in their finances. I mean, at the end of the day, I think sometimes people don't want to take an active role in this, and they sort of default to, okay, I'm looking for an advisor. Oh, that's an advisor, that's what they do. I guess I'll just go see Bob or Sally and hire them because they're just like every other advisor. They don't know, clients don't know that there's transparency out there. There should be transparency out there. And unfortunately, on a lot of advisors websites, it's all about marketing and promotion. It's not about detailing their fees. You can go to
Yeah.
some of the largest advisors in this country, go to their websites, and they don't do a great job of listing their services. They certainly don't list their fees. And a lot of times their answer is to transparency. Go read our ADV. It's all in there. We disclosed it in our ADV. Okay, that's like telling a client to go read the prospectus of every investment that you're recommending to them, whether you manage it or not. So, nobody's going to go do that, even if you tell them what page it's on. I mean, I've seen ADVs that are pretty clean, but again, clean, you could just put that right on your website, copy word for word
Yeah.
in your ADV if it's that clean. And then where the issue is most of these ADVs are not clean, and they're 50 pages long, 100 pages long, you name it. And sometimes it's 5 and 6 pages just to describe the fees. And I've been in this business for 25 years, and I can read that, and I don't even know what I would be charged as a client if I hired them. I don't know what I'd even get. And part of the
Bingo.
problem with the SEC and the regulators and state regulators is that they're using the ADV, and there's a checkbox on there. In addition to, how much assets do you manage? The big thing is, do you do financial planning? Yeah, check. I checked that off. So all of the big name firms on there are appearing like they do everything for everybody, and they have hundreds and hundreds of things they may offer, but most of the time clients don't know whether they need that, or they're paying for something they don't need because nothing is spelled out. It's going to continue to be an ongoing problem because of the way the industry is designed today. And to your point, Canute, I mean, I was on some of those regulator calls with you. Is that regulators at the state level anyway? We can talk about SEC later, but the state regulators, it's even different from state to state of how they
Right.
interpret what an advisor's role is and what they're doing. And I find it sort of, like you made a point of, I put a lot of stuff on LinkedIn and now X and other social media platforms, and a lot of it's sort of food for thought, when I put out there, and a lot of people take issue with it. But these are legitimate type of questions or topics I sort of throw out there, because if an advisor can't tell you what the difference between a financial planner is and a financial advisor, then how do you expect a regulator or certainly a client to be able to figure that out? So,
Yeah.
I just put something out there right before our call, I think to your post, Canute, about the CFP board wanting to, develop some sort of initiative and standard to legalize as an advisor that you be a fiduciary. And that's all great, but it's like everything else in this industry. If it doesn't have any teeth, that it's going to be monitored or enforced in some way, it's just not going to work. And that's kind of where we're at across the board with transparency
Gotcha.
on the advisor side, unfortunately.
Holly, do you have anything you want to add to
Well,
Scott?
yeah, I just have an anecdote because I just I think I'm done with the audit from the state of Florida, which is my first in 12 years. And I was in the exit interview with my main contact person, his colleague, and his manager. And the colleague is the one like taking notes and checking boxes, and they're asking me all the regular questions. And then he calls on her, and she says, "Are you sure you need to be registered?" And I'm like, "Why? Because I don't manage money." And she's like, "Yeah, do you actually like recommend specific funds?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I do." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "So yeah, I think I need to be registered."
Well,
I'm giving
the
investment
point
advice,
being,
a lot
she
of it.
she didn't really know what the heck you did.
They did not understand it. Fortunately, my main contact regulator, he did, and he from the get go, he's like, "Okay, I understand. You don't management advice only." He somehow knew, but because she was brought in at the end, she was kind of like, "What are we doing here?"
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Scott, to your point about the ADVs, my poster child is Ameriprise. 16 pages to answer the question how we get compensated. 16 pages. And I think your larger point is the larger point. Never mind an investor not having a clue what the hell that means. I guarantee you that not by their own fault, but Ameriprise's reps themselves don't have a clue what it means either. So, it is the blind leading the blind in that respect. Okay.
Well, and also I'd just add on there briefly that, the sad part about that, just using Ameriprise as an example, is that even at the 16 pages of fee disclosures, I guarantee you that probably not one of their clients is being charged any of those fees. They're so broad and generic in topic, even though it takes 16 pages to outline them, that it's not the actual fees that people are being charged. They're being charged all kinds of different product sales, AUM fees, and everything in between.
Gotcha. Thinking, Andrew, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did. Can you hear me okay? I just got my mic on. Can you hear me?
Just barely I can hear you. I don't know about the other folks, but yes, go ahead.
Okay, well, my question was following up with Scott, what Scott said. Does anyone have any evidence or anecdotal or otherwise of how many advisors actually publish their fees on their websites? Has anybody looked into that or studied it? Because it seems to me very few do post their fees on their website.
I'll just take that briefly. I don't know of a source for that, Andrew. I mean, other than people doing their own research. I mean, Sarah has a good list on her website of advisors doing that, but just as the industry overall, I don't have a great source other than just aggregating data that's available for free at the different regulator websites, and people that might have database skills to go in and create some sort of analysis and look at it like any other aspect of an advisor business. But unfortunately, a lot of those services that have done that and extract like ADV data from the regulators, they have kind of turned it into more of marketing products and not so much drilling down into the data and what is it saying about different things. And I'm not sure that you'd get that out of ADVs anyway. I mean, sometimes like we were talking about ADVs, that it's so opaque still in there, even when they're disclosing the fees. How would they even know whether that's the same thing that's on the website? And that's also actually, I'm thinking about a different problem too, is that sometimes the advisor will list stuff in their ADV and it's so broad. And then you'll look at the few advisors in this country that do list their fees on their website. Sometimes, again, they're not being nefarious or anything. They're just, sometimes they don't even match their ADV. So, get your fees in sync too, even from that standpoint. It's great that you're listing them out, but it's still kind of confusing sometimes when those are different.
Yeah. A little bit of a follow-up to Andrew's question. Sarah, as a point of fact, quote unquote, do you know how many transparency advisors there are out in the marketplace? I as a point of reference, as you've heard before, I use the Cerulli 300,000 as the universe of all brokers and advisors that are client facing. I think that's part of how they came up with that number, and we have estimated that just 7% of those 300,000 would meet our fiduciary real fiduciary practices. So it just makes me wonder whether we have any sort of estimate or count of how many transparency advisors there are out there.
Well, first of all, to answer the question about like fees on the website, I would say it's like 20% of advisors have their fees on their website. Like if I look at 10, because I'm a marketing consultant, I look at websites all day. I would say if I'm looking at 10 websites, there's maybe 2 with fees on the website.
Is that all RIAs or is that all just transparency advisors? Is that
Well, even
universal?
within the transparency community, I would say it's higher. I would say it's maybe 50%.
Yeah,
But I
okay.
had to send out an email. So I was cleaning up my directories and I'm like, if you, just saying I'm an hourly advisor is not enough. You need to
Yeah,
say
yeah.
what the fee is.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them say this stuff like, oh, the fee is customized. That's just a covert way of saying, I charge AUM fees, but I call it a flat fee. It's just, I'm going to base it off of your assets once I find out how much money you have. That's the only reason somebody would write that on their website.
Yep.
So those people, I said, if you don't write that your fees on your website, you're not being on my directories. I would say there's there's probably about 50 like hourly, like truly hourly advisors, pure hourly advisors that aren't doing anything else than hourly, 50 of them. Advice only is growing. I would say maybe like 100. And I would say in terms of flat fee, I would say maybe like 150, possibly 200 flat fee advisors that are purely flat fee and are doing nothing else.
So part of your definition and your nomenclature is they have to solely be using this method. They can't be doing this and some other. They can't also be offering AUM.
No, they certainly can't be, because when they offer AUM, I mean, AUM is going to make 6 times as much money for them. So all the resources of the firm are going to go towards the AUM.
Sarah,
Okay.
I don't see anybody say, I see a lot of AUM advisors that are charging flat fees as an option for the clients that aren't going to put up with it.
Yeah.
But I don't see many flat fee advisors that are charging AUM occasionally whenever they get somebody. It's only in the case that they're working with extremely, in cases, small portfolios, like that they got referred in and they just can't be conscionably charge a flat fee that would be commensurate with the flat fee that they're charging.
Yeah.
So they feel that they need to charge AUM. But if someone's charging AUM and flat fee, they cannot be on my directory as a flat fee advisor.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Michael, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, Sarah, sorry, I'm taking notes right now. Could you say that line that's like sort of a red flag on websites that like stands out for you when you can tell someone is charging for AUM?
That the fee is customized.
Perfect.
Customized for complexity.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah, for your numbers there. Is there a single or one or two most important barriers for growing those numbers in your mind, Sarah, Scott, Holly, or is it all across the board? The barriers from preventing more growth.
By the way, I mean, those numbers I said, I would say that that's aggressive. I don't actually know.
Okay.
I mean, I would say that hourly is probably accurate, but I don't know. I mean, I would say 50 to 100 advice only and maybe like 100, maybe 150 flat fee. There's a ballpark. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
I haven't really looked at these things. The barrier would be that there's just not enough good modeling. Like Andy Panko rocked the whole world when he closed his business to new customers in under 2 years. And now everybody wants to be like Andy. And we need like 25 times that in order for advisors to really be inspiring. And for then things will change. All right. When that happens, things will change. But that's what I'm trying to do. A lot of times I have people come onto my Zoom calls and talk about their practices, and they're doing amazing things. They're charging 40 grand a year flat fee, and they're building practices this way, and then nobody knows about it because it's so fragmented that they just don't know. I mean, I'm uncovering big firms, like 7, 8 advisors at the firm, and they're all charging all flat fees. And I've done this numerous times. And It just debunks the myth that flat fee means broke, or flat fee means not scalable, or flat fee means solopreneur. There are people bucking the trend, and more people will buck the trend because it's not impossible, and there are already people doing it, but it's just not enough communication about it, and that's why my meetups are free.
Yep. Gotcha. Holly Scott, anything to add on that point? Barriers?
I think what I've seen from a barrier standpoint is sort of, it gets back to kind of this, what I was talking about earlier. There's two sides to the people that are looking at kind of the transparency movement, and, you know, whether it's hourly fees or fixed flat fees, is that you've got the people that already have established businesses under kind of the AUM model, and they're looking at this and wanting to maybe transition their business to this. And, you know, they're trying to figure it out still. They're trying to figure out, do I want to pull the trigger and do this? And have I, you know, crossed my T's and dot my I's on everything, and really investigated this before they take the leap to do it? And then you've got the people on the other side that are, you know, not been in the business that long, or just starting out in the business, and they don't have an established, you know, clientele, so they don't have income coming in for the most part that is sustainable to live. And you know, those are the people generally where I've seen that are the most excited about this model, and that's great for all of the new and up and coming advisors that, you know, they're looking at this model from the start. But the issue is I think it's a lot easier for people that have the AUM model to transition to this and do the right thing from a transparency movement, and charge a fixed flat fee or an hourly fee for their services, because they can model all that out, and they can basically transition and I'll say do the right thing from that standpoint, from a transparency standpoint, instead of hiding behind the AUM model that they may not even feel comfortable with, or they wouldn't be looking at this type of situation in the beginning. But then the other side of it is that, you know, the younger advisors, unfortunately, and I've talked with a lot of them, is that they love everything about this. They're energetic. They're ready to go. They're, you know, they're going to do whatever it takes to do it. But the problem is they don't know where to get their clients from. So even though the demand is high, it's still a concern for younger advisors of how they're going to establish a client base under an hourly or a flat fixed fee type of model with nothing to start with.
I'm laughing because I have an anecdote that goes directly to your point you just said right now, Scott. I literally spoke to this younger advisor 2 days ago. He's been in our network as we have gathered a few next gen advisors in terms of what we're doing. And you know what his answer was? And just so you know, I'm not making this up. It sounds like it's made up in the sense that, well, he said, you know, I went to Sarah's conference, and there I met Andy Panko, and Andy Panko put me on his podcast. And as soon as I was on his podcast, boom, he's just been out on his own for a short period of time, and he says he's 4 times ahead of what his projections were. And he's a solid, experienced, quote, you know, with another firm guy. And, you know, but anyway, that was his answer to that question.
No, and that's great. And that kind of gets back to, again, what I was saying earlier, which is, you know, in the transparency movement, we have both extremes, and sort of everybody in the middle, is that we all try to help each other do that. And if Andy is at capacity, or any other, you know, advisor, then, you know, it's great that they are willing to, you know, bring him on a podcast, or, again, in Andy's case, and, you know, much like Sarah, but, you know, Andy is advising clients, so it's a little bit different. Or people are looking maybe, oh, I'm going to go hire Andy or a similar advisor because they're out there and people have heard of them. Well, if they're not taking new clients, at least he has on his website advisors that, you know, are closely matching, you know, his philosophy and what he's trying to offer. So that's great. But there's not a lot of people out there that are doing that. And then the younger advisors that are just getting started, you know, unless you can get on an Andy's podcast or get, you know, in with an experienced advisor, it's difficult for them to build a clientele. I mean, I've talked to these folks firsthand, and yes, the demand is there, but it's trying to get people to find them. And it's not like, you know, unfortunately, some of the mindset still is, well, okay, well, I'm going to just work local. I just want to work within the city that I live in. And,
Yeah.
it's like you have to broaden your horizon if you want to bring on, clientele under this model. If you can't get on, a podcast or a list somewhere or something else, you have to sort of think bigger. And I think that's part of the challenge is that in this business, it's always been two sides to this. There's the advice side of it, the advisor side of it, and then there's the business growing side of it. And it's like doctors, there's great doctors out there, but most doctors are terrible business owners and don't manage their practice as well. It's kind of
Yeah,
the same
yeah,
thing here.
yeah, yeah. Gotcha, gotcha. Any other comments or questions from everything that you have heard? Michael, I will say that if the technology gods are with us, I have recorded this and it will be up on the website in a day or two. But I say if the gods are with us, only because we've had some snafus. So anyway, I will let you know when it goes up.
I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Thank you, thank you. So if there are no other questions or comments, I want to thank you, Sarah, Scott, and Holly. I love what you guys are doing. And I love, part of what attracted me to it beyond the merits of the issue, so to speak, is the passion around so many of the advisors that are on Sarah's monthly deal. I wasn't around, just so you know, I'm not 95 years old. I was not around when NAPFA launched in the early 80s, but I'm sure that you've heard some of the same stories from those that were, and there was a passion and an energy around what that first generation of NAPFA advisors did. That, when it comes to fee-only fiduciary, I don't see it. I don't see it in the marketplace. I don't feel it in the marketplace, except when it comes to what you guys are doing. So anyway, as I say, I love what you're doing, so keep it up and all that good stuff. And thank you for speaking with us today.
Thanks, Canute.
All right,
Thanks, Canute. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
Bye.